At the family barbecue, my daughter-in-law threw my piece of steak on the ground and said, "You want to eat steak? Go to a nursing home and gum it down, you useless old woman." The next day, I packed my bags in silence and sold the house. My phone rang 28 times. She begged me to forgive her, but I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me what city you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has reached. I woke up before the sun. The neighbor's rooster hadn't even crowed, but my body already knew what day it was. By 5:30, I was in the kitchen. I put on the checkered apron I've had since my son Robert was in elementary school. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I'd long since stopped asking if anyone appreciated it. The meat had been defrosting since the night before. It was a good cut. I'd bought it on sale at the market, but it still looked beautiful, nice and red. I seasoned it with garlic, lime juice, salt, a little dried pasilla chili, and oregano. I sealed the plastic bags, let them rest, and moved on to the lemonade. I cut up 4 pounds of fruit, filled the cooler with ice, pulled the chairs out of the storage room, and hosed down the backyard patio. By 11, I had everything in order. I pulled out the grill, the one I'd bought with my own money, for Robert's birthday because his wife Melissa was embarrassed to have parties with the old one. I also set out the ice and the chairs, and left everything ready. I sat down with a cup of coffee that was already lukewarm. I watched the sunlight peek over the old garden wall. It wasn't happiness, it was habit. It was 1:20 when they arrived, late, of course. As always, no call, no text. Robert was at the wheel. Melissa got out with her dark sunglasses on, and the kids didn't even say hello. They'd brought another woman with them, someone named Samantha, whose name didn't ring a bell. They hadn't even bothered to tell me someone else was coming. Melissa walked in, dropped her purse on my table, and kicked off her heels. "Put on some music, Lucy. It's like a funeral home in here," she said while digging for her phone. "Yes, I'll put it on now," I replied, and went to get the speaker. Their daughter, Anna, cranked up the TV to full volume. Their son, Brian, sprawled on the floor with his video game. Samantha went out to the patio to smoke her vape, right in front of the no smoking sign. I approached her. "Excuse me, miss, there's no smoking here." "Oops, I'll turn it off." "Ma'am," she answered, but she didn't even try. She blew a cloud of vapor in my face and walked away, laughing. "Don't worry, I'm just letting you know," I replied, swallowing my anger, as I had so many times before. I went back to the kitchen. I went to check on the meat. The grill was hot. I placed the pieces on it, just as I did every year. I tended the fire, turning each piece with tongs. I burned my finger and didn't even feel it. It was almost 2 when I served myself my portion, a piece I had set aside for myself earlier. I put it on my plate with a little salad. I was just about to sit down when Melissa came up to me. "You eat steak, too? Well, look at that. I thought you only ate old lady soups," she said, with that smile that isn't a smile, but a knife. "Well, yes, sometimes," I answered, without enthusiasm. "Oh, I don't know why I thought you were only eating salt-free mush by now," she blurted out, and laughed with Samantha. She laughed, and without another word, she grabbed my fork, pushed the steak onto the ground, and said loudly, "You want to eat steak? Go to a nursing home and gum it down, you useless old woman." I didn't pick up the steak. I just stood there looking at it, lying on the hot cement. A fly was already circling above it. No one said a word. Robert, beer in hand, just looked down. The kids didn't even flinch. "Doesn't she hear you, Mom?" Brian said. "She doesn't even notice when people talk to her anymore," Samantha added, under her breath. "So sensitive, the old lady. It was just a little joke." I stood up straight, without trembling. I could feel my blood boiling inside. My heart was tight as a fist, but I said nothing. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator, took out a soda. I sat at the table, not a word. And I told myself, it's over. I didn't cry. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't make a scene. I just took out an old notebook, the one where I used to write down recipes. On a back page, I started writing, in blue ink, "Call Michael, check savings account, find the old will." My back ached, but my pride hurt more. But most of all, it hurt to see my son sitting out there, letting them do that to me, as if I was worthless. I put the notebook away and walked to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired, but they were firm. I wasn't going to keep being the woman everyone ignored. Not anymore. When I came out of the kitchen, Melissa was with Samantha, taking selfies. Robert was on his phone. Anna glanced at me. Is Grandma mad again? She muttered. Oh, don't let her throw a tantrum. If she can't take a joke, she shouldn't host. Melissa shot back without looking up from her phone. I walked over and asked, do you want more lemonade? Yes, but with ice, she said, without looking at me. I went for the glass, filled it, gave it to her. She took it as if I were a waitress. In my mind, I was no longer thinking about lunch. I was thinking about boxers, suitcases, documents. I was already leaving. They just didn't know it yet. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I locked myself in my room. I could hear laughter and music from downstairs. I didn't go down. No one knocked on my door. And that's when I knew this wasn't my house. Not anymore. It was a trench where I was sent to cook, to care, to be quiet. I went to bed early that night. I covered myself with the blue quilt my mother had woven in 1965, and before I fell asleep, I thought, they don't need me anymore, but I don't need them either. At 6:10 the next morning, I opened my eyes without an alarm. The house was quiet, as it always was at that hour, but for the first time in many years, I didn't have to make breakfast for anyone. I didn't put on beans. I didn't heat up tortillas. I didn't put water on for oatmeal. I put on the same linen blouse I wore when we buried my husband. Not for drama, but because it made me feel strong. I didn't turn on the radio or the usual coffee maker. I just boiled some water and poured myself a black coffee in a glass mug. As the steam rose, I dialed from the landline. I didn't want to use my cell phone. The sound of the running water from the bathroom, which I'd left on, covered my voice. Michael, it's Lucy Ortka. Lucy, what a pleasure, he answered, his voice hoarse, like he'd just woken up. I'm not in the mood for small talk. I want to sell the house this week, and it's not going to Robert. There was a brief silence. Are you sure, Lucy? Don't you want to think about it for a few days? He asked, lowering his voice. I've been sure since the moment I saw my piece of steak on the ground. Michael took a second to respond. Then he lowered his voice again. Did something happen to you? I paused for a moment. I rested my elbow on the table. Yes, what happened is what happens to a lot of mothers. I got tired of staying silent. He was quiet, then said, give me 2 hours, and I'll be there. He didn't say anything else. He wrote down the address, the time. We agreed on 8 o'clock sharp. I hung up and sat at the table. The coffee was ready. I poured it into my faded floral mug, the same one as always. I took 2 sips and started packing. I had already gotten things ready the night before. It wasn't hard to pack. When you're leaving a place where you're no longer treated like a person, you only take the essentials. I put away what was truly mine, the album with the black and white photos, the sweater my mother knitted for me when I moved to this town, and the blue notebook where I wrote down recipes no one ever asked for, and the 3 envelopes, one with my savings, another with the insurance papers, and the last one with the new will, the only one I actually planned on signing. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Michael had a camera, a notebook, and a tape measure hanging from his neck. You work fast, I told him. Well, if you're decided, so am I. Sometimes you need a change before you get torn apart from the inside, he said, walking in. I showed him the house, living room, kitchen, the 3 bedrooms, everything clean, tidy, with no signs of children or visitors. Michael took photos in silence. He would glance at me from time to time. It's in good shape. The kitchen needs a few touch-ups, but the patio sells itself. You know what's not in good shape? I told him. My patience, and you can't fix that with a coat of paint. He gave a small laugh. I could tell he was uncomfortable, but I didn't blame him. He had known me when Robert was 12 and used to help me carry in the water jugs. Today, my son wouldn't even offer me a chair. You seem calm, Lucy, he said, in a low voice. I'm determined. While he was measuring the patio, I heard movement from the 2nd floor. Robert and Melissa were still asleep, or at least quiet. Their bedroom door was still closed. On the living room table were the beer cans from the day before. Anna still had her headphones on. Brian was snoring on the couch with a blanket over him. No one suspected a thing. From upstairs, a door slammed. Melissa yelled something. Robert murmured back. The TV volume went up again. Not a single greeting. Not a single "did you have breakfast?" Same as always. By 11, Michael had everything he needed. I'm going to list it today, he told me. If someone wants to see it, can they come by tomorrow? No, only today. After tomorrow, I won't be here anymore. At 12:30, I got his call. There's an interested couple. Young, no kids. They said they loved the house and want to close in 72 hours. Perfect. I accept. I'm leaving tomorrow afternoon. I hung up. I stared at the wall for a few seconds. Then, I went upstairs. I walked slowly to Robert's room. The door was closed. I went in without making a sound. He was sleeping on his side, his face marked by the pillow. Melissa's makeup was smeared, and her cell phone was in her hand. On the table, more cans. I didn't say anything. I didn't touch anything. I just left a note on the dresser. You once asked me why you never saw me truly angry. Yesterday, you understood. I left the room. I went to mine. I closed the closet. I put my clothes in 2 medium-sized suitcases. I folded the album, the blue notebook, the envelopes. Everything fit. The rest, they could have it if they wanted. At 5, I called the movers. A simple truck, like me. No noisy moving vans. Just someone to come by, pick up my things, and take them somewhere else. Somewhere I could finally be at peace. I hung the keys on the refrigerator. A silly but symbolic detail. As if to say, Lucy was here, and now she's gone. As I was going up to my room for the last time, I heard Brian's voice from downstairs. Mom, why isn't Grandma coming out? Because she's having one of her tantrums, Melissa said. I didn't answer. I didn't go down. I locked the door. I sat on the bed. That night, I slept without fear. I didn't dream of yelling. I didn't dream of dirty dishes. I didn't dream of unanswered questions. I just waited for the sun to rise. The morning I moved, the truck arrived at 7:15. A white truck with a rusted roof. The driver rolled down the window and yelled, Lucy, is this the place? Yes, son. This is it. He got out with another young man who was chewing gum. I pointed to the 3 boxes I had placed by the entrance the night before. Is that all? The gum chewer asked. That's all. I don't need the rest anymore. 1 box with books, another with photos, and 1 more with my things. Simple clothes, medications, a few letters stored in onion skin paper. 40 years can fit into so little when you've become invisible. While they were loading the boxes, I took one last look at the empty living room. There was nothing of mine there, not even on the walls. Everything that remained was what they believed was theirs by right, by blood. As if that was enough to deserve someone, Michael called as the truck's engine started. Lucy, the couple, is on their way. They're excited. They loved everything. They said they can already picture themselves drinking coffee on the patio. Tell them to enjoy it. And not to forget to take care of the shade, that bougainvillea blooms even on the ugliest days. I hung up. The sun was already hitting the patio. From the sidewalk, I saw that the curtains in Robert's room were still closed. Inside, silence. Outside, fresh air. I got into the truck. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. The only things I left were the note on the table, the keys on the fridge, and a clean house, empty of me. The driver closed the door and asked, Does it hurt to leave? No. What hurt was staying so long. I got in. The cold morning air dried my eyes. I didn't cry. The house was left behind without anyone knowing it was my last day there. We arrived at the new apartment shortly before 9. The building was quiet. At the entrance, there was a pot with dried flowers and a hand-painted sign that read, Welcome to all who come in peace. We went up to the 2nd floor. The number 2C was painted in light blue. When I opened the door, I was greeted by the smell of new wood and old dust. It was small, but it was enough. I placed the box of photos by the window. I took out the picture of my mother, the black and white one where she looked serious, with her hair pulled back. I put it on a low bookshelf next to a pot with a cactus. I smiled. She hated cacti. She used to say they brought bad energy, but she also used to say, life is hard, and it's better to have thorns than to be trampled on. I put water in the kettle, opened the windows, and let the air sweep away whatever I was carrying with me. Finally, silence. At 10:27, my cell phone rang. Robert, I let it ring. At 10:34, he called again. At 10:48, again. At 11:12, it was Melissa. Then Robert. Then her again. At 11:41, he left the first voicemail. Mom, where are you? What are you doing? At 12:04, Melissa, are you serious? You left, without a word, without saying anything. At 12:30, Robert called again. I was still sitting in the kitchen, with a slice of toast and unsweetened tea. At 1:17, a new message came in. This time, a text. "You can't do this, Mom. You can't just disappear like this." I ignored it. At 1:46. "What about Anna and Brian? Are you going to leave them too? What are we going to tell them?" I didn't reply. At 2:20, Robert left another voicemail. "If this is about the barbecue, fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry. Happy now." I took a sip of my tea. At 3:45, it rang again. "Lucy, it was Melissa. You can't just abandon your house. This isn't normal. This is insane." At 4:30, another message. "Where are you? We need to talk. This can't be left like this." I was still sitting in the same chair. No rush, no panic. At 5:18, "You're cruel. I never thought you were like this." At 6:47, it rang again. The 28th call. Robert. His voice was trembling, almost out of breath. "I don't get it, Mom. I really don't get what you're doing." I opened my blue notebook. The same one where I kept recipes. On a new page, I calmly noted. 6:47 Robert, 7:01 Melissa Secchi Ivici Novi Robert, 8:12 text, 9:04 voicemail, and so on, until the list was complete. Every call, every attempt to hold me back. Not as a mother, but as a useful figure, a serviceable presence. I put the notebook away. I turned off the cell phone. I put it in the silverware drawer. I went to the window. Outside, a woman was pushing a bread cart. A child was laughing on the sidewalk. No one was screaming my name. No one was asking me to heat up tortillas. No one was asking me why I was so quiet. Just air. Just me. I turned on the radio. A local station was playing Old Bella Rose Contigo Apprendi by Armando Manzanero came on. I felt like singing along softly, but I couldn't quite remember the lyrics. I poured myself another tea, and in that empty kitchen, with a borrowed chair and a table with a plastic tablecloth, I realized something. There is no abandonment more painful than that of a mother who is still in the house, but whom no one sees anymore. I closed my eyes and breathed. For the first time in years, I heard the sound of my own existence. First Monday morning in the new apartment, I was awake by 5. Not out of habit, but because there was nothing weighing me down. I opened my eyes and knew that, finally, this Monday was not like the others. I put on my sandals, tied up my hair, and went straight to the kitchen. I put water on to boil, made coffee, and out of inertia, I took out 5 mugs. When I realized what I was doing, I laughed to myself. There was no one else to serve anymore. I poured just one for myself. I sat in the chair by the window and watched as the light slowly crept in, drawing clear lines on the floor. It was a different kind of silence, not the silence of something missing, but the silence of everything finally being in its place. Suddenly, I heard little wheels in the hallway. I peeked through the peephole. A short woman with her white hair in a bun was pushing a shopping cart. She stopped when she saw me struggling with the cover of the utility meter. "Need a hand? That cover always gets stuck," she said, not with pity, but like someone who had fought with that contraption many times before. "I would appreciate it. I just moved in yesterday, and I still haven't figured these things out. To see, right? I'm Mira, from To Be. Welcome." She handed me a small plastic container wrapped in a napkin. "Almond cookies, they're not too sweet, in case your blood sugar is a little rebellious. Thank you. I don't have diabetes, but they'll go nicely with my coffee. And if you need to know where the good market is, or where they sell meat without gristle, here's a list." A woman who's lived alone for a long time learns to find the best without overspending. We stood there talking by the stairs, about the heat these past few days, about how the price of tomatoes had gone up, and how tortillas used to taste different. Nothing about family, nothing about the past. And that, as strange as it sounds, felt like respect. At noon, someone knocked on the door. I opened it carefully, thinking it might be the building manager. It was a man in his late 40s, with light brown skin, a plaid shirt, and a frank smile. "Hi, I'm David, Mira's son. I live with my wife and daughter in 3A. Mom told me you arrived yesterday and probably haven't had time to cook yet." He handed me a tray with 2 hot tamales, wrapped in banana leaves. "It's not much, but they're good. Chicken with mole sauce." "Thank you so much, young man. But you didn't have to. It's not out of necessity. It's a pleasure. You should always welcome someone as if they're going to live here forever." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and took the plate. Inside, I was surprised, not so much by the food, but by the fact that no one asked me if I could still cook, if I felt up to it, or if I'd taken my pills yet. David said goodbye naturally, without pitying me or asking for anything. He just left the tamales and went downstairs. I sat at the table and tried them. They had that flavor you feel in your chest before you feel it on your tongue. The kind of flavor that doesn't insult. After eating, I called Eleanor. I hadn't spoken to her in years, though we exchanged postcards now and then. She was a colleague of mine at the elementary school where I taught for almost 15 years. Lucy, she shouted as soon as she heard my voice. Is that you or a friendly ghost? It's me, but newly reborn. I told her, without going into detail, that I had moved out on my own, that I had decided to start over. She didn't ask questions, she just said, I'm going to give you an address. It's the St. Michael's Community Center, over here in my area. You'll like the workshops. There's a reading one, another for crafts, and on Fridays, they have a coffee night with live music. I wrote down the address. She repeated it twice, just in case. Before hanging up, she told me, I don't know what you did, but your voice sounds like it did when you were a teacher. Firm. That's probably because I finally don't have to explain myself anymore. Well, welcome back, Lucy. We missed you. That night, I cooked for myself, for the first time in who knows how many years. And not because I had to. I cooked because I wanted to. I chopped an onion and a zucchini, fried an egg, put 3 strips of bacon in the pan, and opened a bottle of red wine I had bought months ago, but that no one in my old house wanted because it made them sleepy. I set out a clean tablecloth. I turned on the radio. I tuned into a classical music station. They played a piece I couldn't name, but it made me close my eyes. There was no one there to say it was too salty. No one asking if it was olive oil or vegetable oil. No one pushing their plate away or complaining about the smell. I ate slowly. It tasted different, stronger, more mine, after washing the dishes. I opened the blue notebook, the one I used for so many years to write down shopping lists, class schedules, vaccination dates. On the first page, I crossed out a phrase with a thick pen, Robert's mom, and below it, I wrote in capital letters, Lucy Ortega, no labels, no borrowed last names, no titles that weigh more than they're worth. I turned off the light, left the window open. The night was warm. I wasn't afraid. A week after leaving the house, my body was already starting to let go of the habit of living constricted. I would wake up without the knot in my stomach. I would walk without that whisper in my head saying, make them breakfast. Mira and I already had our routines. We would go down to the farmer's market together, haggle with the man selling cactus pads, and share cooking tips as if we'd known each other for years. On Sundays, I would bake anise rolls and leave a tray for the lady in 2D in the afternoons. I would read until my eyes closed. The phone was still off, stored in the bottom kitchen drawer. I was in no hurry to turn it on. That Sunday, I went down with my market bag. I bought lemons, fresh cheese, a crusty roll, and a bag of coffee beans. I walked back slowly, giving the doorman a slight nod. I entered the building, and, as I turned into the lobby, I saw them, sitting on the waiting bench. Robert, with his head down, his eyes swollen like they used to get when he had a fever as a boy. Melissa, with her makeup smeared, her blouse wrinkled. Anna and Brian were beside them, both staring at the floor, silent. I kept walking straight, as if I hadn't seen them. But Robert shot up and stood in front of the elevator, blocking my path. Mom, he said, please, just 5 minutes. I'm begging you. I stood still. I looked at his face. He had that expression people get when they can no longer pretend. I sighed, not out of tiredness, but out of resignation. I nodded. We sat in a corner of the lobby, far from the mailboxes. The cold marble walls echoed our breathing. Melissa was the first to speak, with a voice that was trying to sound sweet but was trembling underneath. Lucy, I know that that I was wrong. Very wrong. Sometimes I go too far. I say things without thinking. It's the stress, the house, the kids, work. I held up my hand and cut her off. No, it's not that you go too far. It's that you finally said what you really think. Don't apologize for the delivery. What hurt was the intent. Melissa looked down. I continued. Do you remember when you threw out my reading chair because it was old and ugly? My husband gave me that chair for our 10th wedding anniversary. And you put it out on the street without telling me. Robert tried to speak, but I raised my voice. And what about when you told your friends that you had a free maid at the house? Or the day you left the kids with me to go get your nails done, and when you came back, you said my cooking smelled like a shut-in, and old people? No one said anything, not even the children. Anna stared at the floor. Brian was scratching his ear. It was the first time I had seen them without the haughty attitude I was used to. Then Robert spoke. Mom, we got kicked out of our apartment. We don't have anywhere to stay. I lost my job a month ago. The kids are going to get kicked out of school if we don't pay this week. We didn't know who else to turn to. And the money from the fund I gave you 3 months ago? I asked. The one that was for emergencies. Robert tensed up. Melissa pressed her lips together. No one answered. We used it. Robert muttered, for house stuff, debts. I looked him straight in the eye. He looked so much like his father in that moment. The same expression he made when he didn't know how to admit a truth. Then Melissa changed her tone. This isn't about pride, Lucy. This is about the children. You're punishing your grandchildren. Is that what you want? I let out a small laugh, but it wasn't a laugh of mockery. It was of sadness. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just no longer catering to those who didn't know how to respect me. Does that seem unfair to you? And what about family? Robert asked. Aren't we still that? Family isn't an excuse to mistreat someone. Family isn't a place where you become invisible. If I am nothing in your lives, then you are no longer a part of mine. I stood up. I picked up my bag with the rolls. I walked towards the elevator. Robert said, softly, Mom. I stopped for a moment. Don't call me Mom to convince me. You should have called me Mom when you let them humiliate me in my own home. The elevator doors opened. I got in without looking back. As I closed the door to my apartment, I leaned against the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. But it was heavy. Because no matter how much you free yourself, there are wounds that feel like broken bones when the weather changes. Mira was waiting for me in the kitchen, with the radio on low and a cup of chamomile tea. Them again, she asked. Yes, they came as a group, like an organized attack, I joked, barely smiling. She poured me a cup. I sat down. And what did you tell them? The truth. That I'm no longer their service center. That if they want a family, they first need to learn how to be decent human beings. Good for you, she said, raising her cup as if in a toast. I toasted back, and in that simple gesture, I understood that sometimes a family starts with 2 cups of tea and a woman who doesn't ask you for explanations. On Tuesday, bright and early, I put on a floral blouse I hadn't worn in a long time. I combed my hair, slowly, put on simple earrings, and grabbed the bag where I keep my glasses and a notebook. I walked to the St. Michael's Community Center with the nerves of someone going to a job interview. The building wasn't new. The walls were painted a yellow that had once been cheerful, and the wooden doors bore the marks of time and hands. But from the street, you could hear laughter. Not music, not shouting, sincere laughter, the kind that comes out when you feel you belong. I walked in slowly. A man with white hair and a cane smiled at me as I passed. I went to the front desk. A short woman asked me, "Who are you looking for, dear?" "I'm looking for Mr. Baltazar Rivas. A friend sent me." "Are you Lucy Ortega?" "That's me." The woman nodded and shouted, "Balta, the new one's here." Out came a tall man with a denim vest and a lively gaze. He offered me a firm handshake. "There are no old people here, just people who got fed up with putting up with nonsense and want to do something with the time they have left." I smiled. That was enough for me to know I was in the right place. He took me to see the reading room, a space with tables, chairs, with straight backs, and a bookshelf full of titles I recognized from a distance. He offered me a seat and explained that today there would be a reading aloud for the members with vision problems. "Would you like to read?" "Of course, if you don't mind a voice that doesn't sing like it used to." "No voice bothers us here, Lucy. What bothers us is the silence of those who don't dare." My turn came to read from Pedro Páramo. As soon as I opened the book, I got a little nervous. I hadn't read aloud in years, but I started, slowly, pronouncing each word as I did when I taught children to read in elementary school. Across from me, a woman with short hair and painted lips listened intently. When I finished the first chapter, she wiped away a tear. "You read so beautifully, ma'am," she said. "I'm Jacinta Robledo. I used to sing boleros when I had a waist and teeth. Now I just listen, but oh, how I enjoy listening to that voice of yours." I laughed. Jacinta was witty, the kind who throws out jokes without warning. "If you ever felt like no one was listening to you, Lucy, she told me as we said goodbye. Here, they'll listen even when you cough. I thought about that as I left the room. No one had said something so simple and so true to me in years. The following week, I was invited to the women's group Rewriting Our Lives. There were 8 of them, each with a different story. Some had raised 10 children, others, none. Some had worked in factories, others had sold candy at school. The day's topic was the time we decided to say enough. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath, and I told them what happened that Sunday. How my daughter-in-law threw my plate on the floor. How my son stood by in silence. How that discarded piece of steak made more noise in my head than anything they had said to me in years. They didn't interrupt me. No one corrected me. No one said, "But he's your son." They just listened. At the end, a woman with red-dyed hair asked me, "And do you plan to forgive him?" I answered without much thought, "I've always known how to forgive. But this time, I want to learn how not to go back." That same day, on my way back from the center, I ran into David at the entrance of the building. "Ms. Lucy," he said, smiling. "What are you doing on Saturday?" "I suppose the same as always, reading, watering my plants, and going to bed early." "Not anymore. Carmela, my daughter, is turning 3. We want to invite you." "My mom said if you don't come, there's no cake." I smiled at him. I accepted. On Saturday, I arrived with a small gift bag, a little storybook with pictures and a bow. Esperanza, David's wife, greeted me. She hugged me as if we were already family. The patio was decorated with purple balloons. Music from an old children's show was playing. There were kids running around, adults drinking coffee, and in the background, Mira, with a calm smile, sitting under an umbrella. During the party, amidst the games and laughter, Esperanza handed me a small package wrapped in tissue paper. I was surprised. "This is for you," she said. "From Mom." I opened it. It was a hand-knitted wool shawl, wine-colored in one corner. Embroidered with white thread were the words, "For Lucy, the one who was born again." I had to swallow hard. I don't like to cry in front of people, but I felt something break inside, one of those old knots you carry without knowing. I sat down next to Mira. "What's this gift for?" "Because not all families make you feel at home. Some manage to do it without sharing a drop of blood." I fell silent. I squeezed her hand. That night, back in the apartment, I turned on my cell phone. I had 56 unread messages. I read them one by one. "Why did you leave like that? You left us with everything. Don't you care about us anymore? I miss you, Mom. I just want to know if you're okay." I didn't answer any of them. I just went to my contact list. I deleted names, one by one. I left 3, Mira, David, St. Michael's Center. I turned off the phone and put it away in the drawer. I poured myself a cup of tea, wrapped myself in the shawl, and opened the book I had brought from the library. The next morning was more humid than usual. One of those fine rains that don't make a sound but soak your shoulders. I left for the market early, with the shawl pulled tight, the grocery list folded in my purse, and my old-soled shoes that didn't slip anymore, or so I thought. As I got out of the elevator, I noticed the hallway floor was damp. The wind had pushed water in through the poorly closed windows. As I passed the stairwell landing, I stopped dead. Mira was lying on her side, near the railing, not moving. I ran to her. "Mira," I shouted, crouching down. She had a scraped knee, and her face was as pale as paper. Her mouth was twisted. Her eyes were open, but they seemed unfocused. "Can you speak? Can you hear me?" She moved her lips, but no words came out. I stood up and immediately called David. He was on his way to work and answered on the 3rd ring. "You have to come back. Your mom fell. She's not responding well. Call an ambulance, please. I'll stay with her." 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. David came running, his hair uncombed, his shirt half-buttoned. He knelt beside Mira as the paramedics did their work. "What happened?" he asked me. "I didn't see anything. I just found her like this." At the hospital, the diagnosis was an ischemic event. Not severe, they said, but there was some damage. It would be difficult for her to speak, maybe to move the right side of her face a little. Rehabilitation and absolute rest, and above all, company in the waiting room. David and his wife Esperanza looked worried. They weren't arguing, but there was tension. She sat with her purse on her lap, he with his elbows on his knees. "The apartment is full," David said. "Carmela barely has a place to sleep." "I have a spare room," I interrupted, without thinking. "Too much. If you agree, I can take care of Myra." It's no bother. On the contrary. Esperanza looked at me as if she didn't understand. Really, of course. We already live in the same building. I care about her a lot. And I have plenty of space and time. I didn't say it to be nice. I said it because it came from the heart. Because it hurt me to see her like that, lying there as if she'd been forgotten. When we returned from the hospital, 2 days later, I already had the room ready. I cleaned the guest room, put on a soft quilt, a small table with a lamp, and a painting of flowers I had kept from my old house. Myra came in leaning on my arm. She walked slowly, dragging her foot a little. She still couldn't speak well, but she understood everything. She looked at me as if she wanted to thank me with her eyes. You'll be peaceful here, I told her, helping her into bed. No rush, no noise, just you and the smell of coffee. I left a glass of water on the nightstand and a clean washcloth. Over the next few days, we adapted. In the mornings, we drank tea in silence, listening to the radio. When the announcer for arthritis cream came on, we would both laugh. Even though she could only move one corner of her mouth, I cooked what I knew she liked: light soups, toast with butter and guava jam, rice with plantains. She would try to help, but I would stop her. You're the boss here, but no heavy lifting, I'd say. Today, you're just supervising. One Tuesday, while organizing her sock drawer, I found a folded piece of paper. It was old, with torn corners. I opened it by accident, thinking it was a recipe. It was a letter from her husband. The date was 1996. My love, the letter said, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you, but I want you to remember something. You don't have to be strong all the time. If one day someone offers to grow old with you, don't close the door on them. We weren't born to be alone. I folded it back up, put it back where I found it, and said nothing. That night, as I brought her a cinnamon tea, I approached the bed. She was knitting clumsily, but still with a rhythm. Mira, I said, if you don't mind, I'd like to be that person you grow old with. She looked at me, surprised, but without drama. Just a soft expression. She nodded slowly, and then took my hand with her still trembling one. We didn't make a pact. We didn't say any vows, but in that half-smile, in that wordless gesture, I knew she understood what I already knew. The days passed. Her rehabilitation was slow, but steady. Every word she managed to say correctly. We celebrated like a holiday. Coffee fee, she said one morning, with effort. That's it, I shouted. You're already giving me orders, huh? We laughed. One day, Esperanza brought Carmela to visit. The little girl brought a paper flower for Grandma Lucy, and a drawing. Why, do you have two grandmas? Her mom asked. Because, the girl said, because one lives with me and the other gives me cookies. I laughed. Myra did too. That night, I wrote in my journal, today, I don't know what will happen tomorrow. But tonight, as we listened to Belarus in the kitchen, I know I'm not alone. Here, between 2 cups of tea and a pair of old hands, there's something that feels like love, but without demands. And that's enough. I put the notebook away, turned off the light, and fell asleep to the faint sound of Myra breathing in the next room. It wasn't just my house anymore. It was our house. That afternoon was overcast. It wasn't cold, but the sky had that gray color that seems to have weight. I came back from the community center with sweetbread in my bag and a desire for silence. But when I got to the apartment, I found something under the door. It was a white envelope with no return address. I picked it up, looked at it for a moment, and opened it. Inside were 3 pages written in cramped handwriting. It was Robert's handwriting. That mix of haste and clumsiness that never changed since he learned to write in the 3rd grade. Mom, if you're reading this, I hope there's still something left between us that hasn't completely broken. I sat at the kitchen table. I set the bread aside. I read slowly. He said he was sorry, that he had acted badly, that he had gotten carried away by stress, by pressure, by his own immaturity, that Melissa was going to therapy, that he had gotten a job as a supervisor in a warehouse, that the kids were asking about me, that he missed my cooking, my stories, the way I folded napkins. I don't want to make excuses. I just want you to know that I'm trying to be better. Even if it's late, even if I don't deserve it, I'm just asking for a chance, a small one, to fix something, anything. I finished reading, without crying. They say you cry when you feel surprised, but nothing surprised me anymore. It hurt, yes, but I had buried surprise a long time ago. I picked up the phone. I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. Mom, he said, his voice trembling. I read your letter, I replied. If you really want to fix something, start by doing something for someone else. Not for me, for someone who needs it. He was quiet. This Saturday, at 8. Come in comfortable clothes. We're going to clean out the old book room in the building. It belongs to Myra. It's a mess. You want me to? That's right. If you intend to change, start by getting your hands dirty. Okay, Mom, I'll be there. Saturday dawned, sunny. I prepared 2 thermoses of hibiscus tea. I went downstairs before 8. I cleaned the entrance to the basement a little. I put out trash bags, gloves, and a mop. I waited. 8:15, nothing. 8:30, silence. At 9, I went back up. Myra looked at me from the kitchen. And the young man? She asked, raising an eyebrow. It seems he's running late, I said, without resentment. Well, my room will remain a mess, but a dignified mess. And I'll remain an old woman, but an old woman with dignity. We laughed. On Monday, I got a text. Sorry, Mom. Anna woke up with a fever and we couldn't leave. I'm really sorry, I replied. Next Saturday is your second chance. The following Saturday, I prepared everything again. This time, I even made oatmeal cookies. I left them on a tray. I went down to the basement. I waited. 8 o'clock, nothing. 8:30, nothing. 9. I went back home. That same day, another text, sorry again. This time it was the truck. It wouldn't start. So frustrating. I swear it wasn't because I was being lazy. I replied with 3 words, last chance. Next Saturday, the third Saturday, he didn't even write. I turned off my cell phone. I put it in the pantry drawer and didn't touch it for days. Almost a month passed. One morning, as I was sweeping the entrance to the apartment, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Robert appeared, disheveled, with a wrinkled shirt and a cup of coffee in his hand. Hi, Mom, he said. I brought your favorite coffee. Vanilla latte. He held it out to me like an offering. I looked at him. I cleaned the room 4 weeks ago, I said, without raising my voice. I'm sorry, really. I've been yes, you're always busy. He just stood there, not moving, not knowing what to say. I don't want it. The coffee. It's too sweet. Never liked things that were overly sweet. He lowered his arm. He put the cup on the small table by the entrance. Can I at least help you with something else? Yes, I said. The community center needs volunteers. People to read to others, to clean, to keep the lonely company. I already spoke with Baltazar. You can go on Tuesdays or Thursdays. You choose. Well, on Tuesdays I have to pick up the kids. And on Thursdays Melissa works. So you're not busy, you're just unwilling. As always, he fell silent. I looked at his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of the boy who hugged me when he had a fever. They were the eyes of a man full of excuses. Mom, don't reject me like this. I'm not rejecting you. I just don't have the heart available for long waits anymore. He took a step back. So, you don't want to hear from me anymore. It's not about wanting to or not. It's about being able to trust. And that, son, can't be bought with an expensive coffee or pretty letters. He stood there, looking at the cup, which had already gone cold. Okay, he said. Take care of yourself, Robert. You too, Mom. He left, leaving the cup on the table. I went inside. I took it to the sink. I poured out the contents. The smell of vanilla lingered in the kitchen for a while. Too sweet, too late. That night, I wrote in my journal, there are pardons you give to let go, and there are others you don't give, not out of pride, but because they're no longer needed. Not everything that breaks can be used again, and that's okay. One morning, early in the week, I was coming back from the market, my bag hanging from my arm and the lettuce dripping on the napkin, when I saw them, sitting on the building's bench. Robert was hunched over, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Melissa had chapped lips, smeared makeup, and a sweater that wasn't hers. They weren't destroyed, but they were dim, like old light bulbs that still glow a little but no longer illuminate. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the stairs. They stood up. Mom, Robert said, we just want to talk. I didn't answer. I climbed the steps with a steady pace. I could hear them following me. Their shoes dragged with an urgency that wasn't new. What was new was my way of not turning around. In front of my door. Robert moved ahead. Please, just a few minutes. I sighed, turned slowly. I put my bag on the floor. What do you want? Robert swallowed. He looked at Melissa, then at me. We're in a bad way. We lost the room we were living in. We have nowhere to go. We need something, anything. a loan, a mattress, whatever. Melissa, always ready to justify the unjustifiable, chimed in. We can pay you back, or sign something if you want. We can even look for the people who bought your house. Maybe they'll let you. Where are the children? I asked, cutting her speech short. With a friend. It's temporary, she said quietly. I was silent for a second. Then I spoke without raising my tone. Like when you said you'd stay at my house for a month, and you stayed for 3 years with no end date. Robert frowned. Mom, we didn't know it would drag on for so long. Things got complicated. Things always get complicated for you, don't they? But only when you need me. When you're ignoring me, everything's fine. Melissa stepped forward. It's your family that's asking for help. Family, I said, lowering my voice like someone preparing to drive a knife in with precision. Family isn't the people who show up when it's convenient. It's the people who stay when you're no longer useful. They looked down. The truth burns more than contempt. The money from the house, I said. I divided it. Robert lifted his head. What? Part of it for me, part for the community center, and part to take care of Mira, because she never made me feel like a burden. You gave our money to some lady who isn't even related to us. Melissa snapped. It was my money, my house, my story. You didn't inherit that. You lost it with every insult, with every silence, with every malicious joke. Robert came closer. Mom, you've always been the strong one. You taught us to endure, to not give up. No, I taught you to be decent. But it seems you didn't learn that lesson. He looked at me, his eyes red, his dark circles pronounced. So what are we going to do now? I don't know. But it's no longer my responsibility to figure it out. He raised his hand, touched my shoulder. I calmly removed it. I don't want to hurt you, Mun. I want you to understand that I still need you. No, Robert. You needed me when kids defended you in elementary school, when you broke your arm, when you cried about being rejected from college. But the day you let them throw my food on the floor, let them call me useless, that day, you stopped needing me, and I decided to stop being your safety net. Melissa crossed her arms, annoyed. You're being very harsh. No, Melissa, I was tough when I swallowed all your insults for the love of my son. This is justice. I opened the door to my apartment. I'm not that woman anymore who stays up late wondering if you have dinner or not. I don't live there anymore. Not emotionally, not physically. Robert tried again. Even if you say you aren't, you're still my mom. Then act like a son. I closed the door without rushing. I peeked through the hallway window. I saw them walk away. They were moving slowly. They didn't speak to each other. They didn't look back. Myra came out of her room, wrapped in her pink housecoat. Does it weigh on you? It hurts, I told her. But it hurts like when you finally pull out a thorn that's been stuck in you for years. She offered me a cup. I have some ginger tea for you, so your soul doesn't get cold. I smiled. Thank you. Today, I needed that more than an apology. We sat in silence. You know what the hardest part of getting old is? She said to me. That they don't see you anymore. But you know what the best part is? When you get tired of pretending, you can leave without asking for permission. And that afternoon, as we listened to the radio, I knew I no longer belonged to them. But not because they had cast me out, but because I, finally, had let myself go. On Saturday morning, Mira and I tended to the balcony together. The sun was soft, barely pushing the shadows away. Mira already had her straw hat on crooked, a bottle of lukewarm water, and her old spray bottle. I had my little gardening shears, and the homemade sprayer with dish soap and chili powder, in case the aphids appeared. There it is, she said, pointing to the middle branch. And yes, there it was, the first tomato red, round, with just a tiny green stripe at the top. I can't believe it, I let out. That one looks like a real one, not just for decoration. Mira threw her arms up, as if she'd just won the lottery. Oh, you have no idea what this means to me, she said, laughing. I used to have a whole garden when David was little, flowers, basil, even squash, but a tomato has never excited me like this one. We stood there looking at it for a good while, as if it were a newborn. Should we pick it today? She asked. No, tomorrow. Let it get one more day of sun. Just one more, I replied. At noon, the doorbell rang. It was David with his wife, Esperanza, and their little girl, Carmela. They were carrying a covered pot and a tray with aluminum foil. We come armed, he said, holding up the tray. Tamales and cornatole, nice and hot. We all sat in the living room. I set out glasses, poured hibiscus tea, and looked for cloth napkins. It smells like a real grandma's house in here, Esperanza said, laughing. Well, she has 2 of them, Carmela replied, pulling a crumpled drawing from her backpack. It was a sheet of paper with crayon drawings, a lady with a gray braid, watering a plant with red fruits. Below it, in crooked block letters, it said, "For my Grandma Lucy." I didn't say anything. I just hugged the drawing. "Do you like it?" the little girl asked. "More than anything else I've been given in years." After we ate, the adults talked about things without any rush. The little girl fell asleep on the couch, mouth open, her socks crooked. Later that night, when everything had quieted down, Mira took out an old photo album. The pages were yellow, the photos pasted in crookedly. "This was the day I married Illido," she told me. "Look at that tie of his. He looked like an insurance salesman." We laughed softly. "What did he do?" "He fixed radios. But he always said his real calling was listening. He was one of those men who never interrupted. He would even listen to the silence." I tucked the photo back into its plastic sleeve. "And you?" she asked me. "Robert's father." I sighed. "He promised he would never leave me alone. He left when Robert was 6. He said he didn't know how to be a father. I told him I didn't know how to be a coward, but he left anyway. We didn't cry, we just drank our tea. At some point, I got up to take the cups to the kitchen, and it was there, right at the window above the sink, that I saw him, Robert, standing down below, next to the jacaranda tree at the entrance. He wasn't coming up, not ringing the bell, just looking up, as if waiting for me to see him. "Him again?" Mira asked from behind me. I nodded. "Are you going to go down?" "No, not today." I closed the curtain without any hurry and went back to the living room. When a door no longer opens, it's not out of pride. It's because you learn that not all people know how to enter without making a mess, I told her. The next day, as we were having breakfast of bread with butter and coffee, a letter arrived from the community center. The envelope had my full name on it, in a teacher's handwriting. I opened it. "Dear Lucy Ortega, we would like to formally invite you to coordinate the new Living Memories program. You have transformed the way the seniors here reconstruct their stories. Thank you for restoring value to every shared scar." I didn't know what to say. I just closed the letter, placed it next to my cup, and stared at the plant on the balcony. "Good news?" Myra asked. "It seems so. It seems I still have something to contribute." She raised her cup. "Let's toast with coffee." In the afternoon, it drizzled. That silly rain that doesn't really get you wet, but forces you to close the windows. In the kitchen, we turned on the yellow light. The broth was simmering on the stove. The spoons clinked softly, and no one asked me for more salt, or less fat, or to heat it up again. It was just us, sharing food, simple words, and that good silence that doesn't hurt. People who deserve to be called family more than actual family. We tell this story based on real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identity of the person involved. It is the story of a mother who sacrificed her entire life for her children and grandchildren, and in the end was despised, used, and abandoned. But when she had nothing left to lose, she rose up, and this time, she lived for herself. We don't tell it to judge, but so that whoever is listening might stop and think, how many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes. Now, I'm curious about you, who are listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever experienced something similar? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'll leave 2 other stories on the end screen that are favorites on the channel, and that will surely surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.